Hey, welcome back, guys. Got my coffee and I'm ready to go. Today I wanted to go over how to use Python to run SQL commands or SQL queries or inserts, whatever have you. We're going to go over that kind of stuff. Um, so I have a MySQL database. It's local. I'm using XAMPP. I think that's how you pronounce it. Pretty much what it does is it allows you to run a local uh, MySQL database and also an Apache server. So if you're running like PHP or something, you can go ahead and use something like this and it'll run it locally through localhost. But we're just using it for the MySQL functionality and the database. So I have this database called test. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a table to it. And then from then on out, we're going to use Python to insert to that table, maybe query some data, maybe delete a row or something like that. We'll go ahead and go through different examples. So let's go ahead and create a table in here. Create table. Let's call it users. You can call it whatever you want. You can put whatever values you want. But I am going to create a names attribute, and it's going to be varchar, and it's going to be 100. I guess it should just be name, and then email. That's also going to be varchar 100. And that's all I'm going to do. So now you can see we have this new users table, and we have name and email as the two attributes. You can go ahead and feel free to create whatever table you want if you're following along and if you're doing this on your own. And if you don't know SQL, you can just copy that same exact SQL command that I just wrote. So now let's get into Python and connect to this database and run some queries on it. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm in PyCharm here, and what we need to do is we need to import a package in order to use MySQL. So we go to project and project interpreter, and it is actually called, whoops, we hit the little plus here to find it. It's actually called MySQL connector. So it's this one right here. We'll install it. Wait for that to install. It'll take a second or two. Okay, installed successfully. Get out of here. I don't care about warnings. And we're going to import it. So MySQL.connector. So we're importing that, and now we're able to use it. So I'm going to create a variable called database, and this is going to be the connection to our database. And then, of course, no matter what kind of database you're using, maybe it's like AWS or something, and they'll give you this generated username and password for that. But just for our sake, these are going to be the default values for the user on a XAMPP run MySQL server. So if you actually go here on the phpMyAdmin, you can look at, I think it's privileges. Yeah, and you can see we have user root, and its password is actually just blank. There is no password. That's the default. You can go ahead and create a user account if you want and set a better username and password if you like to, but this is just the default that we're going to use for now. So if you're using this right out of the box, this will be the user name root that you will use. So yeah, let's create our connection. So .connector and then .connect. Connect, right? And this is where our different credentials is going to go. So host is actually going to be localhost. Now, once again, this varies depending on what you're using. If you're using AWS, they'll give you a provided host. I'm not sure what it is. Various different things will give you different host names. So user is going to equal root, right? That's what we just looked up. Password is actually passwd, and that's equal to just a blank string, so it's just that. There is no password set up. And then database is going to be equal to whatever name our database is. So in my case, it is test. Of course, your database may be different. When you create a new one up here, you'll go ahead and name it, and you'll just use whatever name it is that you're wanting to work on. So it's just test. So now we have all of our credentials here, and we're able to connect and run queries on our database. So I'm not really quite sure why they call it a cursor, but we're going to make another variable called cursor, and it's going to be database.cursor. And like I said, I'm not quite sure what exactly this cursor is doing other than allowing us to execute. I think what this does right here is it just initializes the setup. It connects to it and makes sure everything's good to go. So now we can go ahead and write our SQL command. So what do we want to do? Let's say we want to insert. So if I were to insert, let's pull it back up again, into this user table, we only have to worry about name and email. So insert into, and users, right? That's our table name. And name, email, values, and let's just make a random name, call it Joe, and email, it's going to be, j23@gmail.com. Okay, that is our SQL statement. This should work. I believe this is correct just by eyeballing it. Of course, we don't have any way of testing it until we go ahead and run it. It should work. There we go. We can just go ahead and commit that. So if we want to, we can do cursor.execute and then the SQL command. If we wanted to, instead of storing this into a variable, we could have just copied this and put it in here like this. It's just a little more cleaner to do it this way. So if we go ahead and run this, hopefully it'll work. But there's one thing missing, actually, since we're inserting. It's not going to actually show up anything. Let me just show you. So if I go ahead and run this, hopefully there's no errors. There aren't. We would expect there to be values in here, right? Because we inserted wrong. Unless there was an error with how we wrote the SQL, which to my understanding there isn't. Of course, if we wanted to test it, we could go ahead and test it in this, and it would go ahead and tell us what's wrong with it. But we don't need to worry about that. The reason it's not actually inserting, what the heck? There aren't any unsaved changes. Get out of here. The reason there aren't anything inserted is because we didn't actually commit. So it handles this like a transaction without you actually saying transaction at the beginning of a SQL. So usually at the beginning of a SQL, you'll say it's a begin the transaction or whatever. And then at the end, you say commit. This just automatically does that for you. And you at the end have to say commit. So now we just do database.commit. And then everything should be good to go. So now if we run this, we should see when we refresh this new name and the new email that we just inserted into the table now. So that actually took me a while to figure out. I had no idea you had to commit it. And I was like, why isn't this working? No errors are occurring. The SQL's right. And it's just a silly commit that I had no idea that was necessary. But now you know that it is indeed necessary. Okay, so now we're going to actually do a select statement. So we did an insert. We have a value into our table, right? We have Joe and j23@gmail.com. And now we want to go ahead and do a select statement. Pretty simple select statement. We're just going to select all. Not that it matters. We only have one, but we're selecting all of each attribute, each of the two attributes. Select all from users, right? I keep forgetting what the table name is. It is users, okay. Select all from users. We're going to execute this. And now we are going to get all of the results. So we're going to put results is equal to cursor.fetch all. And this gives us all of our results and stores them in this results variable that we just created. Now, if we wanted to, for a in results, we can go ahead and print these out. So we go ahead and print a. So it's going to execute the SQL, which is select all from users, and it's going to store this execution result into this variable that we made called results. And then we're just doing a little for in, or for each kind of, and printing them out. So now if we run this, it prints out the results. So instead, if we did select name from users, we get Joe. Pretty simple and yet pretty powerful, actually. This is a lot of fun. I mentioned this in a previous video if you want to check that out, where I did random name generation. I had a database with users, and I wanted to make some users into this database. Whether they're real or not didn't matter. I just wanted to look like we had some data in there. So I went ahead and I created a bunch of random users with this name generator, and I inserted each and every one into my database, my user table. And then it looked like we had over 600 users. And this was just a school project, so it didn't matter. But it was just something fun to do and throw it into the database. And I could do it in probably 10 minutes with writing the code. So it's pretty powerful and yet not too hard to follow, hopefully. So hopefully you guys found this useful. I know I sure enjoy using Python to run SQL queries on a MySQL database. But anyway, I will see you guys in the next video. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you try this out, let me know how it works out for you. Hope it works pretty well. I'll see you guys in the next video.